House.
Thanks very much, Chairman.
All right, everyone. Let's talk about what just happened in this hearing featuring Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, because there's a lot going on beneath the surface here. If you watch the clip carefully, what you see is a classic example of Washington politics: complaints about process, accusations about bias, and a debate over how taxpayer dollars should actually be spent.
House.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Mr. Patel, I'd like to start with just trying to clear the information blockade. I've heard from members of the committee, constantly from my staff, from stakeholders struggling to obtain basic information from the Corps. And in particular, my staff has repeatedly requested information on the status of studies and projects affected by your review of the Corps' investigations portfolio and by the pause in funding to blue states announced by OMB last October. If you would be good enough, Assistant Secretary, will you authorize General Graham right here, right now, sitting next to you today, to provide my staff with the requested information without further delay?
Senator Whitehouse, thank you for the question. We met 2 weeks ago and discussed this issue. Your staff had requested information about the status of 39 separate projects or studies. I believe within a day or so of me visiting with you, my staff provided you with detailed information on the 39 projects or studies that you requested. We provide it to your staff. And if there's anything that we left off, please let us know.
Well, it would be helpful if I didn't have to wait until you and I had a personal meeting in order to get responses. So to the extent that we've asked for things beyond those 39 or that the responses aren't complete, will you clear General Graham to provide my staff what they need and what they ask for?
Senator Whitehouse, we will continue to do what we've been doing, and we'll do it even better than we've been doing, which is to visit with your team on at least a monthly basis and try to turn around very quickly the request for information. There's no reason for me to clear General Graham. We are one team. We work together, and the information that you receive from General Graham will be the same as the information you receive from me.
Well, let's turn to core missions. Your prioritization initiative proposes to focus all the Corps' resources on core missions while terminating legacy efforts that the Corps believes no longer provide value. Is coastal storm risk management a core mission that will be prioritized in the Corps' annual budget review?
Senator Whitehouse, absolutely. Coastal storm risk management is a growing and critical part of our portfolio. We treat it with every bit of importance as inland storm risk management and navigation. As I spoke to you 2 weeks ago when we visited, I spend a disproportionate amount of my time and effort trying to come up with building infrastructure in our coastal areas to protect flood-prone areas on the coasts, disproportionate to the inland. So when it comes to building infrastructure, not paperwork, I can't think of anything that will benefit more than coastal storm risk management.
So let me back to core missions again. What happens when Congress has directed you in a word of bill to do a particular thing and you have decided that is not a core mission?
Senator Whitehouse, we follow the law. I'm not sure what specific action you're talking about, but we follow the law.
The question of non-structural flood risk management we have discussed a couple of times. You've made some, I think, logical points about dealing with the scope of the potential liability that Corps faces. To address that, I've developed a suite of legislative reforms that would provide the Corps with the authorities it needs to implement non-structural solutions more effectively and more efficiently. My staff requested technical assistance on that legislation in November. and have yet to receive a response. Could you let me know when we can get that technical assistance?
Senator Whitehouse will absolutely provide you with technical assistance. I will say that when it comes to the non-structural issue that you raised, I just want to make sure that the committee is tracking what we're talking about here. In August, on the basis of exorbitant costs per unit that we were seeing, it was costing $600,000 per home to elevate structures. And the Corps of Engineers does not have experience elevating homes at scale on a regional basis to the thousands of homes. It doesn't mean that elevation of structure shouldn't be part of our toolkit. It absolutely should. It's just that at this moment, there were 2 projects affected that were in process and 5 or 6 more that were under the feasibility stage. We just came to you immediately in August and to the committee and said, hey, this is not right. We all have a responsibility here to ensure we're efficiently spending taxpayer dollars. And we want to get it right on non-structural, but quite often that probably means that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers may not be the best deliverer of that, and it doesn't mean it would not help participate in the funding of non-structural solutions at scale on a regional basis. It simply means that the Corps of Engineers may not be the best executor. A non-federal sponsor may be.
Yeah. Well, I'll close out just with the observation that, I appreciate some of the things you've said about coastal risk management, but particularly with Army Corps projects, getting stuff done and getting funding out are the 2 really powerful ways of expressing your priorities. And the continued 20-to-1 to 100-to-1 favoring of inland flooding over coastal flooding, I think, remains a problem. And when the largest adjustment to the Corps' actions is one that disproportionately interferes with coast projects, that makes it even worse. And then you throw in that the blue states tend to be coastal ones, and they were the ones that OMB held up for cuts. It doesn't look like it's a new day for coasts yet, but I appreciate everything that you said about paying more attention there, and I hope we can work together to turn that into some real progress. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chairman, if I may, Senator Whitehouse, when you and I met recently, I committed to get you some information about the distribution between coasts and inland on supplemental funding. And I'll provide that to you now as well as the entire committee. We analyzed all Corps of Engineers spending on flood risk mitigation since 2017, fiscal year 2017. Of the amount spent on flood risk mitigation in total, $24 billion, $9 billion was for coastal storm risk mitigation.
Okay.
First off, the senator begins by complaining that his staff is having trouble getting information from a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about certain projects and studies. Now look, transparency is important. No one on the conservative side is arguing against that. If Congress asks for information, agencies should respond quickly and clearly. But here's the thing. The Assistant Secretary explains that information about 39 different projects and studies was already provided to the senator's staff shortly after their meeting. So what we're really seeing is a disagreement over bureaucracy and communication, not evidence of some massive cover-up or information blockade. Washington agencies deal with hundreds of requests from dozens of senators and representatives, and sometimes the wheels move slowly. That's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just government being government. Now the conversation quickly moves to something much bigger. What should actually count as a core mission for the Army Corps of Engineers? The Corps has a huge job. They handle navigation infrastructure, flood control, storm protection, environmental projects, and more. But resources are limited. That means the agency has to prioritize. According to the official speaking in the hearing, coastal storm risk management absolutely is a core mission, and a growing one. That's important because Senator Whitehouse seems to be pushing the narrative that coastal areas are being neglected. But the numbers tell a more complicated story. Since 2017, the Corps has spent $24 billion on flood risk mitigation, and $9 billion of that went to coastal storm risk management. That's not exactly ignoring the coasts. What we're really seeing here is a debate about how money should be spent, not whether coastal protection matters. And then we get to the issue of non-structural flood mitigation, like elevating homes. The Corps paused some of these efforts because the cost was reportedly around $600,000 per home. Let that sink in for a moment. $600,000 of taxpayer money to elevate a single house. Now ask yourself, is that really the best use of public funds? This is where conservatives tend to draw the line. Fiscal responsibility matters. Protecting communities from flooding is important, absolutely, but the method matters too. If a program is wildly expensive and inefficient, it's reasonable to step back and reevaluate. The official in the hearing even said something that actually makes a lot of sense. The Army Corps of Engineers might not be the best organization to elevate thousands of homes across entire regions. Maybe local governments or private contractors can do it more efficiently. Maybe federal money should support those efforts rather than directly manage them. That's not abandoning communities. That's trying to use taxpayer dollars wisely. But then Senator Whitehouse brings politics into the conversation by suggesting that blue states were disproportionately affected by funding pauses because many coastal states vote Democrat. This is where things start to feel less like oversight and more like political messaging. Flooding doesn't care about party affiliation. Infrastructure planning shouldn't either. The real question shouldn't be whether a state is red or blue. The question should be, which projects protect the most people and deliver the best results for the money spent? And to be fair, coastal protection is absolutely critical. Rising storm intensity, hurricanes, and coastal erosion threaten millions of Americans. Ports, shipping routes, and military installations are often located along the coast as well. So yes, investing in coastal resilience matters. But that doesn't mean inland flooding should suddenly become a lower priority. Remember, inland floods affect massive portions of the country. River systems like the Mississippi, Ohio, and Missouri impact dozens of states. Entire farming regions depend on flood management infrastructure to survive. If those systems fail, the consequences ripple across the entire national economy. So when you hear claims that inland projects are favored over coastal ones, you have to remember, inland America is huge. The scale of the infrastructure required is enormous. What we should be asking is not coast versus inland, but how do we build the smartest, most effective flood protection system nationwide? And that's where the concept of core missions actually matters. Government agencies need focus. If the Corps spreads itself across too many programs, including ones that may not be equipped to manage efficiently, then everything suffers. Sometimes prioritization is necessary. The bottom line here is this: protecting Americans from flooding, whether coastal or inland, is essential. But conservatives tend to emphasize something that often gets ignored in Washington debates: efficiency and accountability. If a program costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per home and isn't being implemented effectively, it deserves scrutiny. If agencies aren't communicating clearly with Congress, that should be fixed. And if political narratives start creeping into infrastructure policy, we should call that out too. At the end of the day, taxpayers are footing the bill for all of this. They deserve solutions that actually work, not just talking points. So yes, coastal storm risk management should absolutely be part of the federal government's core responsibilities. But so should fiscal discipline, transparency, and smart prioritization. Because if Washington forgets those principles, no amount of spending, whether on the coasts or inland, is going to solve the problem. Let me know what you think about this hearing. Do you think coastal flooding is being underfunded? Or do you think the bigger issue is how efficiently the money is being spent? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more breakdowns of what's really happening in Washington.